I'll call our meeting to order. I note that all board members are present with the exception of Mrs. Carter and Mr. Nusis. I need a motion to approve our agenda this evening, which is for our school improvement plans. Thank you, Brandon. Second. Thank you, Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And this is open, right, Carrie?
Yes, it is.
Open meeting, so we're good to go, right?
Mm-hmm. So the first on the agenda is the citizens.
Oh,
I've got it up
I didn't
there.
print anything off here.
That's okay.
Well, this is a whole meeting.
Here, I'll let you let you have mine.
Oh, I got it, thank you.
Okay.
And I've got it up there too,
All
yeah.
right. Item 3, communications, opportunity for visitors to address the school board concerning any agenda topic. Okay, if no one, then we'll move into new business, which is approval of SIP plans, item 4.1. So, with that, here we go.
Okay.
And just to kick this off, the last couple of years, we've evolved from the first time I sat in on one of these on, it was a whole different format, and we came around the next year or so, and it's evolved into more of a collaborative discussion report as to what's going on in the schools, what's working, what's not working, what do we need to do, what improvements do we need to make, what enhancements do we need, what kind of personnel, what kind of more manpower, woman power do we need? Do we need more assistance? Do we need more help in technology or in the library or resources or people? So it came into a real good back and forth. And I haven't been present, but as I understand from Carrie, that all of the building principals have been working together to find crossover needs. And I would like to point out that as a result of last year's talks and our meeting, that information was very useful when we were negotiating our contract, because when we were negotiating our contract, even before we got into some of the money and benefits and that, we talked about the needs in each of the buildings, and we tried to address some of those beforehand, and those were personnel needs that needed to be addressed with the shortfall. So it's very helpful to have a perspective of what you're experiencing in your everyday lives and how that is important at the board level and actually at the contract level, so that we're giving you the resources that you need to provide the educational excellence that the community expects. So, anyone want to add to that?
No.
Well, I know coming off of Thursday's meeting, the collaboration that we had Thursday, we appreciated that conversation, and so we were looking forward to another opportunity tonight to continue conversations about the academic achievement of our students and moving forward into our goals, and as we talked about them as being indicators. We did include the vision, the draft vision of the board, as that is really the overarching premise to as we build our school improvement plans. This is where we're coming from, and what we also keep as one of our pieces of updated information as we build them.
I'm going to just add to that. As was mentioned by Rick, this was very collaboratively done, and so we're going to, as a collaborative group, just kind of discuss points from each slide. There's nothing planned that each person speaks upon. So, as we speak, needless to say, there can be questions. But in addition to this, this really is our overarching, and you'll notice the consistencies in the buildings. That basically you're going to note that we diagnostically make decisions of what students need, and then provide what the students need. And you're going to see that consistency in this presentation over the entire district.
Yeah, I'd like to comment. I wasn't planning on this at all until I read this again and again. This vision that you've come up with, we've always been strong academically and extracurricular and so on. But I think, at least in my time here, this district has become so much more effective in dealing with the emotional needs that we're seeing in our kids. And I'm just glad it's a part of the vision statement because it's a big part of what we deal with anymore. And I think, I can speak for the high school anyway, that they're working very hard to deal with the needs of some of these kids that we deal with on a daily basis. It's good to be a part of their vision statement.
Well, and something that I've noticed is how much the district has really become K-12. You know, we've had these K-12 discussions. Certainly when maybe before I was on the board, or certainly in the early year or two, you know, it was still kind of like high school was doing its thing, and you know, it was more separate. And you know, that was one of those early discussions about bringing everything more together, more flowing from K through 12, and I just love watching that.
It's pretty good people to work with.
One of the things too that I think you'll see in tonight's presentation is when they talk about challenging students at individual abilities, and I think they kind of alluded to that in this conversation, but that, you know, in terms of RTI, response to intervention, I think our approach and the principal's approach and how they showed you some of the data is to show you some of the interventions students get because of our vision of providing that for individual students to promote their academics. So it's all about, conversations aren't just about how many met or exceeded anymore. The conversations are about what students are doing individually, what goals we have for them in problem-solving teams, and in our tiers of intervention we have for each student, and the menu of interventions we have for students, regardless of what their needs are, and how we can meet their individual needs. So I think you'll see that throughout their presentation because that's what their schools are so focused on. Tammy, just give me the
go ahead.
when you want me to go.
Yep. Well, I know as Rick, as you started off, we've come a long way with our school improvement plans, and they've really evolved as education has evolved. Last year, we presented to you and explained Rising Star. And last year, Rising Star was a mandate for schools. This year, it's no longer a mandate, but as an administrative team, we feel that the theory behind it, the philosophy behind it, was very beneficial because it's no longer, it gave us a new way of looking at school improvement. There used to be a point where we had 3 established goals. We worked on those goals through the year. The next year, we established 3 new goals. This is more leading us towards a continuous improvement cycle. So although we're presenting to you today our 3 or 4 indicators, we call them indicators, as they refer to them in Rising Star, because they are indicators of improvement of school, of education, different levels, whether it's the leadership component of our schools or the academic component of our schools. But as we work towards those, and as our teams regularly meet, in a couple of months, there may be a school within our district who determines that that indicator, that goal has been met, and then they will establish a new goal in its place. So we're continually improving, and these are goals just because of that maybe we've assessed them and we see that they're fully implemented, doesn't mean that they're just gone away. These are things that we continually come back to and reassess and reevaluate. Anybody else with it?
I would like to add something to that. I think one thing that it's to keep in mind is when we say what we have for our building indicators and so forth, this isn't just an administrative decision. We have, for example, the middle school level, there's one person representing each department: special education, the history department, math, language arts. And so it's a team decision based on what the teachers and we see as administrators going on, whether it's the academics, or does our school feel welcoming when people enter the building? How safe are our students? And we've met a lot of the things that we wanted to focus on. For example, a safe environment, the fact that we were able to have a little bit of the change into what door parents or other community members, when they're coming into the building. That really changed how our team looked at safety in our building. And so when we look at Rising Star, because I'm a history teacher, we look at it as a living document, and it's constantly changing depending on the needs that we need to meet.
I think the structure of it was what I liked the most, so the rising star, and now we can take away from it. Now, don't get me wrong, it is very, very structured and almost too detailed at times, but the idea of the way it's structured and the research it provides to the wise ways is, I mean, that stuff was invaluable. That research was really, really good.
I think the research, our teams began to think deeper about the different aspects of our schools and what we're doing for students and for the community, and how, because the research gets you to think at a different level. It poses different ideas, furthering, I mean, even beyond what we were even thinking too, in a lot of ways, especially as we're looking at curriculum and aligning curriculum.
And I think with it is the conversations that those promoted, and having people from all different grade levels or departments sitting down and collaborating and coming to consensus on what those building goals were. That even if something was, an indicator was, yes, we are doing this 100%, just being able to have the conversation and say, well, I think about this way, and you think about it this way, and this is what the research says. It was just really nice to have that conversation to make sure that we were all on the same page.
And then taking it a step further, like for instance, on our school improvement day we just had, we had our staff meeting built into that day. It was very rewarding to sit back and watch members of Chatham's school improvement team present to their staff, talk about these indicators. They talked about the compact, just mentioned on several of our schools. We've always had a compact for Title I reading students that parents would sign off on agreeing the parents' responsibility, the student's responsibility, the teacher's responsibility. But as we read the research under that item, we recognized we didn't have a compact for all of our children, and very much we should be, communicating the information and importance of that to all of our parents based on all of our children's needs. So it was pretty exciting to see the Rising Star team get excited about landing on that, wanting to push it further, explain it to their peers, and then now carry it out to where they've sent it out to the parents, but now break it down and put little pieces of that in your newsletter as the year continues, because we all sign so many things at the beginning of the year when we register and see all that material. But now to watch the Rising Star team assess it a little further and say, let's start putting little pieces of that in our newsletter the rest of this year. So we're still putting that in front of parents. What's the student's expectation? What's the parents' expectations? What's our expectation? So it all came from starting with that piece of research for them to take it out. So it's exciting to go through each of these indicators we link, and that's where the living document is so important. As you feel you've massaged that particular piece of research and you have it in place the way you like it, and you start looking at another piece of information. So the state reminded us over and over, do not try to take on too much at once. And because at first you saw, I don't remember how many were there, how many indicators are there, I don't remember. But they kept saying, concentrate on 2 to 4. Don't try to take on so much at once. So I so appreciate them, because we often try to just want to digest and do all of it, but not well, and this way we're doing it well.
It was very powerful. I think last year we took they break out also, there's a smart start and a smart plan where they've narrowed it down to, is it like 22 within those two together, indicators of the 100 and some indicators. And they suggest these are the areas in which to begin. And so we were all able to, in our own buildings, then assess those indicators and then determine, based on our data that we're using, whether it be academic, the student achievement data, our climate surveys, various other means of input from community, PBIS, those sorts of things, determine then for our buildings which indicators are most important to us right now as we're moving forward. And again, then they continue to evolve.
Can I ask a question? The indicators, do you select them per building or is it district-wide? And if it is per building, do the three of you talk about like the elementary level, if they're compatible indicators, or is it really truly what your building needs?
I think it's a little bit of both. It's important that we have that flexibility. We all agreed that the compact was very important to us. That communication piece from the elementary, that we're all speaking the same language when we're communicating with our parents and our families. But also it really has to be at the building level. Because even though we are 3 elementaries, we still have, our demographics are different, our student needs are different and similar, but we have to also have the individuality, I guess, within the building meeting the needs. But we communicate as a team, and we're finding as we communicate that a lot of the needs are similar, even though there are small differences in that.
And what one building might be working on now, another school might be picking that up next month. Because the pacing is unique to your team. So it just kind of depends on where you're at in the pacing of what you're going through and what you've reviewed and where you're at. And also just to honor those team members as they're going through and what they're selecting to work on. So.
Because the overarching goal is student achievement, which is every one of our goals, but every building, whether it be because of climate or because of student clientele, the individual building goals are based on what the students in that building needs, but it's all to directly affect student achievement. So.
May I ask a question? So are you still focusing on the 22 indicators, or have you moved beyond that? I mean, I guess 100+ indicators is a lot. So at the moment, the focusing is on these key indicators.
Well, really, is the prioritization has been actually done. Those Smart Start are the ones that we kind of dissected, got to know, and then each building chose, as Kim explained, even the state says, don't bite off too much. Even Dean said that the other day too. You know, don't try and focus on too much. And so the doc that's showing right now are the prioritized indicators that are being focused on most heavily.
So can you give a little background information about Rising Star? Who authored it? And if it's not required by the state now, how do you have access to this report? Is it like a licensed test?
It's through the Illinois Interactive Report Card. So it is part of IRC. It's the Consortium, the Education for Consortium. It's through Northern Illinois University. And really we've been, in communication with Larry Zobrist, with our local ROE, and in talking to him. And, he assured us that while this isn't a mandate, it's a great resource, which we agreed, and we have the access to it. It isn't something that we have to pay for or anything, but we felt as a team that it was so valuable, the conversations that we're able to have at the building levels and with each other about what we're seeing and the direction that it's going. And really, when we look at the indicators, they are moving us towards, true improvement of all areas of education, because they have different, within the Smart Start and the Smart Plan, they have the academic component, they have personnel, they have the leadership components. You're really looking at the building as a whole, as a unit, and how we're serving not just the students academically, but social, emotionally, the families, the community, as a district, or as it's pretty powerful. There's a lot that goes into it. We're still just dabbling in it, but we're feeling that it's a great resource.
And I think thinking from a broader district perspective, when you had asked if the buildings set their own indicators, which we do, but because the way it's all set up, we are all talking the same language, and every building has been exposed to a similar set of indicators, whether they chose the same ones or not. So I think that just helped make sure that we were all using the same language, same verbiage, looking at the same things. And from there, just deciding, well, at our building, these are our priorities, and at this building, these are the priorities, but we're all talking about the same types of ideas.
So how fresh are the indicators that are here? Are they updated this year? Are they from last year? Where?
Most of them, I know I can speak for Glenwood Elementary. These are goals or indicators that we were working on at the end of last year, but knowing that there was a lot of tasks in front of us in order for us to say that they are fully implemented. Although the schools compact, we did send that out for the first time this year at the beginning of the year, as did all the elementary schools. And so that is one that we decided we wanted to leave that on here because we want to review it. It's a new document. We really haven't had time to go back and gather feedback from teachers, but that's something that we left on. And there is another one that follows this one that would be that it's shared yearly, every year. So I'm sure that would be one that you will see next year coming on here. But a lot of these, we touched base, had meetings or had some type of touch base with our team at the beginning of the school year to ensure that we were all in agreement that these were the goals that were going to be presented, and these are the ones at least we're starting the school year off with. Again, since it's an evolving document, they could change before the year's over a couple times, but we'll be able to share that part. I think last year when we presented, what we really showed you was a snapshot of where we were at that point, which ones we had assessed, where we were in the assessment, whether they were partially implemented, whether we hadn't assessed that indicator yet, full implementation. Before spring, we were able to assess all of the 20-some Smart Start and Smart Plan, and then that's how we've narrowed now down to the indicators that are in front of you, which ones are our priorities at this point.
Carrie, could you scroll down to the middle school? This, we came up with these, it was around like May 8th or something like that. But even already looking at this, our main concern last year, obviously academics, it's always very important. But our teachers were greatly concerned by the social, emotional aspect of the age group of adolescents in our building. And thanks to the board, we were able to reinstitute the true concept of the middle school concept. This has been huge in our building. And we have the ability to wrap around kids' social emotional needs so much more than we were able to in the past. We also are now able to provide Titan Power Hour, and that's that 30-minute RTI segment in our day that we didn't have in the past. And then bringing into it, like I said as well, the conversations that can occur and bringing in parents and students for that middle school concept. We have hit so many of the things that we wanted to do, but we just didn't know how it was going to happen. But by bringing those things back, we're already hitting many of the goals that we had, written in May. And then when we found out officially, in July, we got it. It's made a huge difference in our building.
It's great.
It is great, and I can't thank you enough for that. I remember the faculty meeting when we were able to tell the teachers, we've got it. I mean, tears of joy. So it's just had a huge effect on our climate in our building.
We hope that's what happens with this kind of environment when we're able to sit and talk, bring these types of goals forward and to integrate them with a larger goal. And then it rolls up, of course, into the report card. So it's all rolling toward each other. So as goals are being met, are you adding new goals at that time?
Mm-hmm.
Bringing more on?
Mm-hmm.
And then another question on best practices. When you get together with the buildings, are you sharing best practices, or here's what we did to address this and it worked like a charm? It's perfect. So is that type of interaction happening between all of us?
think that's coming up definitely further with, you know, the instructional piece as well as the PD. That's something that we know that something that was put into place. Of course, our instructional coaches and our interventionists meet frequently to make sure that teachers and students' needs are being met. But I want to just roll with this so that we can answer. Can we answer your question kind of as it goes?
No, save it, tell the flow.
It's not something to know.
No.
But I think before we move past the Rising Star, the resource that it provides, so we're looking at it as, instead of a mandate, and looking at it as a resource and using it to our best ability. And I think that that's pretty powerful that, you know, some districts were pushing against it, saying we're not even going to log in, we don't want to do this. Instead, we're using it now as a resource instead of just a mandate. But Jim alluded to, and I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in, Wise Ways and the research that's behind it, the meta-analysis of research that goes into that and how that's guiding your instruction or guiding your conversations, which is pretty powerful because we can't just sit around and research says it's not best practice to just sit around and storytell about what someone tried or what they think. It's best practice to dig into the research and a meta-analysis like Wise Ways to say this is what's effective. So does anybody want to chime in on that? You kind of hit on that a little bit, Jim. Did you want to add anything?
Well, every indicator and goal you look at, you started by reading what you call the Wise Ways, which was, as Carrie said, meta-analysis of what's the best out there, the best practice, and what the ideal scenario would look like. And I know for our team, you'd read those Wise Ways and you shake your head, yeah, and then occasionally be an aha moment about what the research said. But then once you read the rest of it, for some of them it was like a paragraph, for some of it was two full pages, and it all started to make sense when you put it all together and you read it all, and it really helped us find direction as we chose a goal or to attack, and what does that look like here right now, and what can we make it look like based on what the Wise Ways said. So just that piece alone, if you took everything else away, the research is tremendous and very helpful in guiding us. I know that.
It seems like it's palatable. It's not, you're not digging into some very, difficult to read research. It's like you said, it's
no, it's not really analytical. It's just common sense, good stuff.
But the thing is, it made it so simple for the buy-in with teachers. And not that you have a lot of trouble with that, but it's amazing when you put that research there and start thinking about it. You aren't getting this pushback at all. You're getting that, oh wow, yes, why are we doing that? And they start digging further. So I really appreciated all the work that was done before with putting this together for the Rising Stars, just for the advantage that it's been able to be as a systematic approach. Buy-in is there, and teachers take it and run with it. And later when we talk about how we support with the supports we have with our coaches and everything, taking that further to provide what we need, for the professional development, that's key to success also.
Just one last point, after, Carrie mentioned that you've got all of the research you have, kind of the overarching definition of it, and then the research, and then the indicators will tell you exactly what it's supposed to look like once it's implemented. This kind of gives them a purpose of what it's supposed to look like, what you would see in your buildings, or what you would see in your students, or what you would see in your climate, or what you would see in your parents. You would see these things, because a lot of them would say, oh yeah, once they're looking to research, well, we do that, and then they look at the indicators, ooh, that's what they mean. This is what it's truly supposed to look like. So it's really twofold with the research, and then specific indicators, exactly what it should look like if it were fully implemented.
I think the conversation too, as you're trying to determine your level of implementation, and the conversation about after you've determined whether you're fully implemented or partially within that indicator, whether it's actually truly happening, and then deciding as a team to the priority level. What level of priority is this for our school, and how easy is it then to move us from a partial to fully implemented? So there's a lot of conversation and a lot of analysis about that goes into determining these 3 or 4 indicators that we're working on right now too.
Please, is this your segue?
No, we discussed the fact that that overarching goal is student achievement, but how do we know, I think it was Steve at the meeting that I had to have a little bit earlier, a lot of it early, he just, why do we set goals? Because we have to know where we're headed, but how do we know where we need to head, what's lacking? We are so data driven, and that's why our buildings, might have some differences that you might see, because we have different needs. And these are just some of the ways that our buildings utilize state and local data, and the different buildings sometimes are attached to them. But this data not only gives us academic, but that social emotional component as well. Jim just did a survey that involved families, parents, and so we're driven by data. Every decision that we make is not, the days of gut feelings are pretty much over. So this isn't exactly my segue, but it is coming. So
The challenge that I find anyway is there's so much data, and when and how to choose what to look at, when to look at, and what to do with it. Just the number of, whether it's assessment scores, whether it's surveys, what have you, there's a mountain of data that each of us can put our hands on in a variety of different forms. And I personally find that as a challenge of what do we do to look at. Now I do say, I think the wise way is to help with that and kind of narrow and put a focus to some of the data we should be looking at, but also give us the freedom to choose what data we want to look at in certain instances. But it's no doubt a big challenge, just when you take a look at the volume of data that you collect in a school, whether it's from students, parents, whatever stakeholder group it is, it's a lot.
I think our teachers are learning how to better use it to drive their instruction, to make decisions as teams, and then at the building level and for individual students. A lot of profession built from our instructional coaches have been about using data to make decisions for our students.
I think RTI has been a big part of that, use it at the high school. You're not going to make decisions unless you have the data.
and some of this data is utilizes your overall building or overall grade level, but some of it is not accessible immediate. Some of it, it can be every 2 weeks, to see if you see growth, such as, utilization of our DRA information and then progress monitoring, our MAP information that we utilize 3 times a year to see our growth. It's all used for different purposes and for different time stretches too. So it's all used in different, for different modalities and instructional purposes.
Well, and our leadership team is also look at the data to determine strengths and weaknesses with our curriculum. So it's like you're using it to determine strengths and weaknesses for children, and to review and revamp what you teach day to day, but you also have to take time to look at your curriculum. What's the data tell us what changes are needed there? So it's important that we use it on both sides of that.
And then there's the segue. That was the segue.
Actually, I don't know when this can be addressed, but one of the questions I have is, how are you combining Rising Star with Common Core? And where are you in that regard? I mean, that can be, I don't know when this, but that was one of the questions that I jotted down. Because I thought it would be I just would like to hear what tools you have used and continue to use to meet your Common Core requirements. That can be addressed later.
Well, I think with, when you see quite a few of us have goals that relate to aligning standards and using a document that guides teachers in their day-to-day in assessment. That is where like when we're talking about if our goal has that standards alignment, that's where we're referring to as our teachers that are working on the teams right now to align our curriculum to Common Core standards. ELA, language, reading and language and writing, the literacy component and math right now are in those tweaking stages. We've had that implemented for a year, so now this year they are in those tweaking of those units and what they've established and built and implemented. They've had time to reflect on that. We're just moving into science standards. I know middle school, high school has had a year of beginning to delve into those standards, and our K5, K6 is getting ready to do that. They've started to do that this year. PE will start in the spring, and I know the social studies is on the horizon. It's out there another year, but it's coming as well. And so, we've been diving into that slowly. I think that's one great thing that I know that our district, we used to always say that we've been on this hamster wheel, the never ending, and we finally slowed things down enough that we're able to do things the right way. To just jump in. Sometimes we jump in a little too fast. So we've really taken the timeline that has been given to us and used it to our advantage as we're implementing.
And with that, the main agenda for our school improvement plan days has to center on Common Core. Also our PLCs. So for example, each week, each school has 1 hour set aside for PLC. At the middle school level, it's separated into 30-minute segments. And with that, we set aside time for the departments to collaborate to work on Common Core. And the big thing right now for language arts is the common assessments. Even though social studies is not officially in there, so much of it is based on you need to use primary sources. So they've really added that to the curriculum. So they are, it looked like most of us had the one that says all teachers are guided by a document that aligns standards, curriculum, instruction, assessment. To me, that's where the Common Core, even though we're not saying Common Core, that's what the curriculum is.
Okay.
I think that's a very important point that there's always been standards out there that we've had to move. That education's had to move toward. Common Core is just the name of the current set of standards that are out there. So it doesn't matter what they are, what the name is. We have to align and integrate those within us. And you guys have a process here that's just integrating and aligning. It seems to me like every single time that you meet and fine-tuning to move toward the ends that you want to get to, which is driving toward student achievement.
And actually, I met with 2 coaches today, actually, Amy Fiash and Amy Sutton, and we were talking about common assessments and expectations and aligning to the standards. And the conversation was a great conversation, but it just evolved into the evaluation and the panic over student assessments and the changes that are coming. And it's ironic because I use the exact same analogy with them, that for once, I really feel like we're slowing it down, we're not jumping ahead with the new evaluation that's coming out. We have that deadline that we haven't started the clock, we're not jumping ahead, we're not causing panic, we're allowing teachers not to focus on that, but we're gradually starting the conversations within themselves and allowing them to collaborate, because we heard at the table a lot in the spring about how important collaboration was and how the teachers wanted that. And I really felt like I was hearing that from the coaches today when they're talking about common assessments and expectations and gradually moving towards that, but not jumping so far ahead that we panic or that we implement it and then we have to change, but we're actually doing it the right way and going slow and not jumping ahead of that timeline.
What does PLC stand for?
Professional Learning Communities.
Great question. What does DRA stand for?
Developmental Reading Assessment.
Okay.
It's a reading test assessment. Is there anything else you wanted to add about data, or just give me the signal if you want me to click at it?
Well, and while these are, you know, those, I don't know, the universal assessment data that we're using, and some local, really to a lot of what drives the instruction is that day-to-day formative assessment that teachers are taking all the time to make sure that we're meeting our students' needs. Because really, these are snapshots, they're starting points for us, they're help us in goal setting, then it's that diagnostic, that data that they take every day that continues to move those students forward.
And then just one last thought, so I can just summarize everything. Jim's words of collaboration really answers your question, Rick, because the amount of collaboration that this district obviously is committed to is what is truly calming them with the Common Core state standards, which was so overwhelming to them 2.5 to 3 years ago, beyond belief. Their heads were spinning with concern, and it is overwhelming, but the collaboration between PLCs, SIP days are crucial, as well as release days that are offered, and the permission from, Carrie and you guys to slow it down. It's amazing that the collaboration, and we know that there is an alignment from K-12, but with all 15 fifth grade teachers or all 15 fourth grade teachers are collaborating, whether it be daily, weekly, monthly. So collaboration is the answer to your question, and this district is committed to it, and the teachers feel it, and they are benefiting, as are the students.
And with that, for example, Elizabeth's 6th grade science teachers came over and worked with the 7th and 8th grade science teachers who worked with the 9 through 12 science teachers. So there's that continuum. It's not, somebody said it earlier, it's not back in the day where it's building to building. I mean, this is a constant conversations going on.
Yes, I'm really happy to hear the slowing it down piece, because I know from one of the teachers, a few years ago, we were just, like you said, their heads were spinning, and there were a lot of them who were very upset about the initiation of the Common Core standards, not because of the standards, but here we go again, we're changing again, we have to do it today, and it's really good. And of course, who knows? A year from now, 2 years from now, it'll probably be something new. So slowing it down and making sure that really the ultimate goal is achievement, not whatever the current politically correct guidelines are. Is nice.
When does that mandate need to be finished?
Which mandate?
Common Core?
There's a different timeline for each
okay.
of the content
Okay.
areas, which is nice.
Okay.
Yes, thank goodness.
Letting that spiral in.
And we're currently moving into phasing into science.
Okay.
The next 2 slides really are just some data about where our students are as a whole. When we talk about Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, we're talking about how students are performing. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in with some of this too, but this helps us to look at our strengths, our areas that need improvement by grade level, within buildings, within the district as a whole. And it really leads to some great conversations at our buildings and as administrators too, about what our needs are with our students and how our students' needs are changing from year to year.
Just as a quick overview, Tier 1 is universal instruction. It's what every student receives. And then after you see some needs, then Tier 2 instruction is another level on top of, so it's a layering. So those students that you see are receiving Tier 2 or Tier 2A, Tier 2B. Again, as those layers, they are receiving Tier 1 and Tier 2, maybe even Tier 2B, and possibly even Tier 3. And Tier 3 is with our interventionists, and it is the tiering means that they can get it as a whole group, or they need it a smaller group, they need it again, they need it in a different way, they need it in a different way again. And the this is just this slide, the next slide are showing universal as well as tier 2 and tier 3 instruction that's offered in percentile basically.
And it's really important that people understand that in our district, it's not about replacement instruction. It's about, I want to go back to the layering, because that is the key to really closing that gap and gaining those skills. And really, I mean, I thank the board too for giving us another reading interventionist, has really assisted with supporting more students, in addition to the special education teacher that we added to staff this year too. You can see we're allowed to touch so many more students and make that difference. And again, it's about more. It's not about replacement. It's about those layers. And thank you for that, for allocating that staff for us.
Can I ask a question? I know that there was only tier 1, 2, 3, and you've decided that there's a need to essentially add a 2A, 2B, and I mean, I think I like that. But how did that come about? So just
Some of that was to help, at least at the elementary level, tell teachers and parents where the intervention is coming from. The 2A, for the most part, classroom teachers are providing that as a layer of intervention, where 2B is an interventionist providing that, and then tier 3 is an interventionist providing that on top of the supports that are going on in the classroom, on top of the general curriculum teaching. So I think that was more just of a way for us to signify where the intervention was coming from.
And I think that staff came from this meeting last year. I think you listened to us voicing that we needed more. And, you know, I'm always going to ask for more if you look at it. We have students who need more, but we have to be fiscally responsible at the same time. But just by adding that additional staff, we're seeing some difference. We're helping, we're touching many, many more students. But there's always going to be more out there that we can do.
Okay, selfishly, I want to talk about GIS because it was in my building that we re-implemented the interventionist, and I mean, she's phenomenal anyway. But the fact that we were allowed to have that position again is making a huge difference. And as you can see in the 5th grade, the red, if you can see it as red, you know, a decent sized percentage of students who need that layering. So I can't thank you enough for re-implementing that position.
It's really important from my perspective, and everyone else can speak for themselves, but to hear, I'm very encouraged by the impact that one additional position has. And that's really important when we're trying to make decisions, financial decisions, and approved positions or not approved positions on what that does to what our ultimate goal is and student achievement. And it's a night and day difference between the tone of tonight's meeting and the tone last year, which was more of a sense of kind of exasperation and almost emergency that we need more. And the more was a handful of positions. So it's important that we hear that, respond as best we can, but then see the result and the feedback that we get. Not just this year, but every single year. So thanks for your sharing all of that.
Well, I have a question here. You know, I'm data driven too. I like looking at numbers, but it looks like 3rd grade is sort of it looks like 3rd grade is sort of like a combination of your true understanding in K through 2, and the only reason why it looks like it's a very important grade because I'm looking at the numbers here, and tier 3 has a pretty significant jump in the tier 3, the kids that need tier 3. So how do you explain that? Is in 3rd grade, is that where math is moving to more difficulty, or does anybody have any ideas on this?
what you're seeing right here is, this is just our reading data. And so when we look at this, when we look at this, it's interesting because from year to year, we watch, you know, our groups of students and how they're progressing. But this is, at least I know at Glenwood, as second graders, this was our group of students who were struggling the most. And I think it's just student needs from year to year, and what can we do about meeting those students where they are. I don't know that I can really speak. I would have to go out back and look at our data from our DRA from them as first graders to second graders to third graders. And then again, we've had a lot of mobility even within our district, more than I've ever seen. Actually, I was just talking to our secretary today. Within the last month, we've had 10 move-ins at our school. So it's just, you know, there's a lot of difference. We'd have to really go back, and what's nice is we actually have the means of collecting the data now and being able to look at it from a spreadsheet. It's easier for us to dig into. But that is something, though, that as I was looking at some of this, and I know the elementary teachers the elementary principals, we talk a lot about looking at some of our grade levels. We have different, you know, at each building, there is a grade level that we're most concerned about for one reason or another, and it's just trying to look at the makeup of the demographics of those students, or just, too, part of it is, you know, trying to figure out where the deficits are. Is our gap growing, or is it a new set of students? Is it because of the year? I don't have a true answer for that. I don't know if anybody else does. That's just.
Do you guys ever find this year it's the third grade, next year it's now going to be the fourth grade class, because sometimes it's just those kids
It could be.
Going to need that extra amount.
It could be, and we'd have to watch this group of students and have a lot of conversations within the grade level about what they're seeing, and have them. And like I said, it's interesting because they understand the data a little bit better as teachers. I think each year they've seen them grow as educators and how they're using the data. I've heard teachers talk a lot this year about they know their students better than they ever have. And I think it's just the professional development we've given them, how to use the data, what do we know about it. So it's just some conversations, more conversations to have at the building level for sure.
Can I ask a quick question? As far as your kindergarten data, do we ever look at of the students that are in Tier 2, 2A, 2B, and Tier 3 for kindergarten, do we look at which of those students were participated in our pre-K program, which did not, maybe which went through screening, but we did, to kind of go back to see how we can continually improve our pre-K program?
That's exactly what SIS will do for us too. That's what the idea behind SIS is tracking those students over time. But Joe, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And I don't mean to ask you specifically, I don't know it.
We have never, since I've been involved in it, truly just pulled them out in terms of data like this to track as a cohort group of students. But it is something that we could go back and would be fascinating to see.
I'd just be curious to see which of those, to see if that intervention then prevented them from that. Because then I think that speaks to.
It really would, because we track it in SIS through third grade.
You track it what?
In SIS, in Skyward, we have a way of tracking the students who are involved in the pre-K program through third grade. Each spring, we put in a score, whether they're at grade level, below grade level, above grade level, in reading and math. So that we do have that data.
And we do have that to track.
We do.
In terms of a form like this,
Yeah,
where we're
we've never
looking through
It's a good question, though.
and our Ames Way, and any of that we've had.
I just think, our program's phenomenal. And if those students, we identified and went through that program, and if they're not a part of this,
right,
maybe we need to look at expanding that program or
So this is for reading only, Tammy, then? So there must be one for math, too.
We do not have a math universal screener before third grade.
Oh, okay.
So Jen has successfully created a new subgroup for us here. but it is what's interesting, because that this conversation is focusing on academic growth. So that would be targeting academic growth of our own pre-K program, from year to year to year. Now, this is a snapshot, but that's not following anybody. That's just, it's like the proverbial rat through the snake, right? So that if there's one, to Brent's point, if there's one poor class, it's gonna keep going.
And to kind of piggyback off looking at those trends over time, and the students that we let into pre-K this year compared to the numbers for students we had last year, this group is a more at-risk group than last year. And students who were less at risk based on our identifiers last year got into the program. This year, some of those students would not have gotten into the program. I think, not to jump ahead, but as you had said, in terms of expanding a program like that, we keep on getting
How many did we have
that
go through screening? Do you know? I didn't mean to put you on the spot because I went through the data with you.
I think pre-K we're up to, with move-ins and kids from early intervention to early childhood, I think we're at about 100 now. The grant is funded through 90 students.
Correct.
We put through screening, I want to say, over between 150 and 180 students. And it's unfortunate, we turn away a lot of students that would have benefited.
Sadly, those are our kids that the parents don't have the funds to go to a different preschool. So then what we have happening is they come to kindergarten, they haven't been in preschool for 2 years.
And what we've seen also over the last 4 years with pre-K is before the mobility rate in pre-K was much higher than it is right now. Where a lot of our pre-K families are coming in and staying and going through the program, which is helpful to give some of that consistency to those students and their families and providing that intervention, which research says you get the most bang for your buck at 3 years old. It's a little bit less every year from there.
These are your final ISAT and PSAE scores. You will not see these again. What the new ones will look like with Park, we don't really know yet, but there will be performance levels and there will be scale scores with every child. But these are the 2013, now 2014 kids' scores from last year's ISAT and PSAE at the high school level. I think speaking for the high school level anyway, I think if you look at the trend data, you will notice that over a period of time it just doesn't change very much. It's kind of like the ACT somewhat. It may go up, may go down compared to class like you're talking about, bringing class to class different, but it's kind of amazing overall that they don't change a whole lot. Every now and then you see a jump, but I know, for example, like science, I think they've been at 71 for 3 years, something like that. So this will look somewhat different next year. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but now we're done with the ISAT Park or PSAE.
Do you ever take a longer view than just 3 years? Have you
Oh, yeah.
looked at the data like maybe 6 years ago?
That's
Is
one
it
of the things about
consistent?
the IIRC site. You can just immediately pull up a 10-year data performance level chart. Even so, I was looking at those the other day. If you just draw a trend line, it just doesn't change very much. It's pretty amazing.
Until the cut score changes.
So I was going to say, until they changed the, yeah.
So after the cut score change, now it's improved a little bit. In this
Right.
class. It's not,
Right.
you
There
can
was
see the
one
boom
kid.
and then it's
Yep.
a slight increase.
And I'm just learning a lot. So what are we shooting for? This is what they are, but what are we shooting for in these areas?
Well, the hardest thing is now, this won't compare to next year because the test is completely different. New cut scores, which won't be established until this summer.
So we don't even
And
know what type
goal
of
is-
score to look at or shoot for.
And we may or may not have this information at this time next year. They're hoping for
hope to
October,
have it out
that
in
they'll have the
October.
information to us. Where these we received in July.
July.
So, they keep kind of going back and forth with when they're hoping to get
I
it.
don't think they can.
I don't think, no, I don't think.
But these ISET scores are post-credit score change, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So these are actually lower than they used to be.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and then we're semi-comparing apples to oranges here because two years ago, they changed the ISAT assessment to mirror what they thought Park would look like. And the rigor, that was what they were touting, was that the rigor would be higher and that they would be making some connections between texts, very different questioning. So you can't even compare this year's and last year's to 3 years ago.
And you
It's
can't
apples
even-
to oranges tests.
Right, I can't even compare the last 2 years because 2 years ago it was 60% part Common Core and
Right.
and then state standards. And then at the very, I mean, it was a pretty quick change last year before the test. They decided it was supposed to be 80-20. They decided to go 100%. So
Common Core?
yeah, on this last ISAT. So really, it's really difficult to even compare the last 2 years, even because it was a different test.
Which goes back to why you're looking at these
Yes.
for your
Tells us a
data
lot more about our
points.
kids.
You're looking at more than just this or this, even in the past. Now, these are
Right.
going to change for this year, but you're looking at lots of data pieces in order to make decisions.
Well, hasn't there always been a struggle with PSE anyway, and kids not really thinking that they're all?
I think that will always be a challenge for students
But it
until it's
will.
something that impacts them with like ACT, right,
Yeah,
John?
I think through the whole RTI process and everything, you're gonna, at the November board meeting, you'll see a presentation by our APs with an incentive that I think is gonna help. Now, it's gonna be parked, so we don't know what it's gonna look like, but it's always been, that first day of ACT, those kids they're on point. And then the next day, PSE, it's PSE.
And we've been talking a lot as a team too about how much we're concerned about the number of assessments students are given this spring especially, and the length of those assessments and the burden it will put on students, not only pulling them out of instructional time and losing instructional time, but also how much it will weigh, especially on our high school students, because you look at AP testing and ACT and their park and anything that they might have for any dual credit classes they're taking, plus their final exams, plus, there's so much that's on their back at that moment. We're losing a lot of instructional time, and we're also putting a lot of pressure on them for testing purposes, and we have concerns about it.
Yeah. And the instructional time is the biggest worry in my mind. Park's gonna take a lot of time to assess.
I agree with that. That's a big, I'm one person, I can't make a difference. Like, when they just start talking about 4 assessments a year apart, it's crazy.
What's refreshing to me is hearing all of you understanding that we're not teaching to any type of test or any type of a standard. We're teaching best practice and achievement in the core of math, reading, and science, and history. And as long as we continue to excel in those areas and help our students excel, they're going to perform well on any test, regardless of the format or how it takes. So those basics are so critical to cover.
What does REP stand for?
RTI.
Oh, RTI.
Okay, response to intervention.
Oh, yeah, I know what it is.
We really couldn't have talked about this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
We just throughout the conversation.
Yeah.
So,
We really have.
Okay, so the specific supports.
Well, one of the things that, I know we've talked about this a little bit along the way too, but we just wanted to have at least a visual for you about all the supports that we have in place for our students who aren't getting what they need with just that tier 1 or that the basic instruction within the classroom. And we have a lot for our students, which is very exciting. I know at the 3rd and 4th grade level, we have additional supports to offer this year through the YMCA and the United Way grant. YMCA applied for a grant through United Way and partnered with our district. And it was initially, they were trying to get a grant that would support 100 students, up to 100 students, 3rd through 5th grade. They ended up getting a partial grant, so we determined, as both Elizabeth and Joe had talked about, the earlier we can get the intervention, the better for students. So we decided to focus on our 3rd and 4th grade students. The after-school enhancement program is, I guess in a nutshell, a tutoring program, but yet offers some additional interventions and supports for our most at-risk students, our students who are at risk academically, but also in terms of economically as well. So we were able to, we have between 40 and 60 students. Right now we have 22 students. We are busing students from Ball Elementary and Chatham Elementary to Glenwood, since we are the last out. It's easier for them then to be bused to our school to host it. And Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're in our second, we've had 2 full weeks of the program. And I know I've heard from a few parents of students, at least at Glenwood, they say that the kids love it. They love being there, they're making it very meaningful and fun. Also, because when you're extending your school day by an additional 2 hours, they have to have that motivational piece. So they're using some online programs. They're also offering tutoring and some homework help, trying to really tailor it to individual student needs as much as possible. We have volunteers from the high school students are coming over to volunteer as an additional help too. So it'll be exciting to track the students and watch the students and see how the program is benefiting them as well.
Seems like a lot of these we've talked about in the past, so I don't know if anybody has questions about these, but we've talked about it for several years.
I like that, because I was just about ready to ask, can somebody give me an example of the average day in the life of a kid that walks through these doors? Because there's so much more to it than just a kid having the ability to learn. It's all the other stuff going on in their lives. Mm-hmm. My wife's she teaches in her school district, and she's got some kids. One in particular she talks about is a very bright, very good kid, tests well, but her home life is horrible. And they can't get that kid to excel in school because there's so much other stuff going on in their lives. And this is important. I mean, they have the ability, they have the potential. We just got to get it out.
I think we're very fortunate in this entire district. I'm sure Joe would share, but we have some excellent counseling, counselors, individuals, but we also have many layers in place, such as the check-in, check-out, so that there is an adult that starts their day and is at every half hour of their day and ends their day to make them feel valued. Because at school, it might be the only place that they feel that way, and we recognize that. Our counselors are amazing as they push into the classrooms, or they have, standing appointments with our students. But we also have a real, and even though that's tier 3 wraparound, or is it all I feel as though even though truly wraparound trained, all of our buildings are wrapped around each of these individuals, all the way from bus drivers, custodians, and our paraprofessionals who dearly love and work so hard with our students with special needs, all the way up to our APs and us who have lunch with them, all the time. So I agree with you, Steve.
So the challenge is we don't have the resources to have somebody follow every kid around every single hour that they're in this building. So we have to try to
put programs in
blocks
place
and groups and work them through the system so that none of them get left behind.
Well, I think on top of the counselors, I think the social workers play a major part in that too. And I think we were able to kind of revamp kind of the approach we take, the structure with our social workers this year. But I met with the new teachers on Tuesday, the first-year teachers, and I think it goes back to relationships. And I know I said that at our meeting Thursday night, but we really have to get that message across to all of our teachers about forming relationships with students, because they do have to find that one person. We talk about all the time the impact that a teacher, that a staff member makes on a child, and how every interaction is an opportunity to have that long life last. You're going to get me into my speech, so I'm not going to go into it, but I mean the impact that we have as working for a school district, it's so powerful for our students and for our families. And it goes back to, since we can't follow everybody individually, it goes back to that collaboration and that trust between staff members and between buildings, and to have that true team effect and look at the whole child and not just look at snapshots or one assessment, but look at the big picture so that we can diagnose and work together to give them what they need on an individual level as well as collectively as a district.
And I think that's some of the PD that we've given to our teachers too, is about building the relationships. And I remember some of the most powerful PD that I've received has been actually from Kim when I taught at Chatham Elementary as a principal. And I remember she talked about, and I did this with my staff last year, about what kids bring in their backpack is not about the paper, the pencils, the books. It's about the things that we don't see. It's about what happened at their house last night. Did they have breakfast that morning? You know, just those things that's really what they're carrying in their backpacks. And so it's about the relationships that we're building and getting to know the students and helping them through their day, really determining what it is they need beyond just that surface of what we see.
Well, I think this district does that really well. I've never been in a district where, especially at the high school level, because it tends to be a little bit different. You know, they're growing and so on. But the number of adults who can be involved in a kid at school. You know, I've been doing this 30 years, so back in the day when the only person involved the kid was the particular teacher that hour. And now, if a kid needs something, you know, there can be 10, 12 people involved with that kid. And we're providing different supports in different ways. That's a great thing for this district, and something they should be proud of, because, you know, I think when you mentioned social worker and SAP people, you know, if I can go to my social worker and say, what can you tell me about so-and-so? And before you know it, she'd give me all kinds of information. The SAP coordinator walks in, gives me more information. The counselor comes in, gives me more information. They know these kids and they're involved with them, and that makes a big difference for them.
Do we have any way of measuring whether these kids are aware that support's there?
Sure we could. I don't think we do anything currently.
Do we talk to the kids? Do we get feedback from them? How do they?
We get feedback in different ways.
Surveys.
We just did a survey that, you know, would ask things like, do you feel supported at school, and do you have an adult you can go to?
It's that Gallup.
That's more general.
The Gallup poll.
The Gallup poll is like that.
But what's your response rate, like on the 5 essential surveys? What is it?
Well, it depends on what group you're talking about. We pretty much force students to take it.
Right.
Oh,
I
pretty
know,
good.
you force, but I mean, like, what's your parent response rate?
Well, we just gave one for high schools involved, something called Advanced Ed.
What's it called?
Advanced Ed, NCAA,
Okay.
used to be North Central Association. And we sent it out to everybody, and we had to get 20%. You know, so the bar was set pretty low by Advanced Ed, and I think we got 21% parents.
So that is maybe not the best mechanism for what Steve is trying to promote.
No, but I think you were asking, are students aware?
Well, yeah, we've got all these
Yeah.
Yeah.
supports for struggling students.
Are parents aware?
Do they feel that support? I mean, do they?
I think
feedback
our parents are. Now, I could be totally wrong there.
Especially
you know, we
when
have
their
different
child's
opportunities.
involved, don't you think? When their child needs an intervention, then they are more
Yeah, we try to be very clear,
perhaps.
like 8th grade parent night and things like that.
Mhm.
These are the supports we have in place.
But I would think in some of these situations, awareness to the parent isn't what you're looking for because the parent's already part of the problem.
In some cases, exactly right.
So these are.
Well, and typically it's not a self-selection of a parent knowing about it or a child knowing about it and saying, I want to be part of check-in, check-out. Instead, the data shows them who needs to be in check-in, check-out, or who
Right.
needs wraparounds, and so they go by what the data says, rather than saying, here parents, here's a menu of what you can try. For example, the intervention that Tammy's talking about with after school, they were selected by the data, and they looked at that, so.
But
It's the system we have in place.
Yes.
So that we can handle the number of kids we have now, but what happens when our enrollment doubles? Is that system still going to be solid enough that we can?
As long as you have the staff to.
You need resources.
Yeah,
We
good
can
question
identify
though.
them.
But I think, like she pointed out, the data is there. I mean, we keep documentation of, how many students the counselor's seen or how many students we met with during Kid Day, things like that. But if you have to ask a student, I mean, it's kind of like when I used to teach history and I would say, oh, remember when you learned about the Civil War last year? We didn't learn about the Civil War. You know darn well they learned about the Civil War last year. So.
And you see that, and you see the flip side of it sometimes too, and I know it's a tiny sample size, but half our kids in check-in, check-out right now, and we're talking elementary, self-referred.
Yeah.
They went to their teacher and said, I think I really need to be in this because it's going to help me focus. And I think that speaks to what you're talking about, at least a little bit, Steve, and that we have elementary students who are aware that some of these things exist out there. But you do run into the other ones that you could have a sign in front of their face and it's a law know about what that is. So I think you see a little bit, but with the big picture, we have a lot of supports. But I think the social emotional piece, which we're doing a better job every year addressing, is becoming a bigger and bigger piece of what we see in the schools. I mean, just looking at low income percentages alone, looking at the 5-year trends from all the buildings, we have a much higher percentage of students meeting low income guidelines this year than we did last year, than the year before, the year before, which all then plays into the other social emotional factors that get brought in with that. So I think the fact that we're able to identify that, put these supports in place, and then wrap around with all of the supports really speaks to what we are able to do. It would be nice if it was something you could follow every kid, every day, but I think we've definitely moved in a positive direction with the changing demographics that we are seeing.
So that term wraparound, does that mean academically? So describe wraparound, or is it that, that's looping, where you have same kids for 2 years? Okay, what's wraparound?
The wraparound in a tier 3 social emotional sense is creating a group of people, oftentimes a group of people that student and their family chose to be as part of their support group. And I know that one of the families in our building had this student the last couple of years, and the students in another building now. And we've kind of had individuals from both buildings who have formed relationships with this student and their family being in and saying, all right, what supports can we put in place? Or if you're having some struggles at home, you could do this and we could do this, and kind of provide that parent education piece as well as the school education piece and the social emotional piece and getting your counselor, social worker, teacher, administrator, all of these people, and completely wrapping and surrounding yourself around that student and their family to provide the supports that they need.
And the community resources that are available to the family. It's about linking them
invite
up
a
into
minister
the
or
community so
something.
that when
Yeah.
the school day ends, the parents can kind of take it and continue on.
And those are tier 3 interventions for SEL.
So how many tier 3 kids do you have involved? Just out of curiosity.
Officially tier 3, we are focusing on 3 students right now. We realistically have more than 3, but just trying to focus on a group that we can truly provide that support. I think as we move further and further along with our social emotional supports, we will be able to provide more tier 3 services to these students, but I believe 3 is a
So
curriculum that we're providing this.
So Kim, is there, do you have 3 or 5?
I have a kindergartner, a first grader, and we share, I have a third grader, but we share the wrap with it.
Okay.
With the student, and we share because of being in both schools, but also has a sibling. And because it's not just the student, it's the whole family piece that's so important. So it's really powerful, and when you see the parents be excited that a teacher and the assistant principal is coming to your house, and let's see what we can help you set up here so that your child is more successful. Maybe it's coming to school is an issue, so what can we help you set up to make sure your child gets up in the morning and gets ready, and what things can we help you put in place if it's something with attendance, or maybe it's something with completing homework at home, what can we help you set up here? Understanding it's got to be the parents invited that, we're not pushing it on them. They've invited key people to be part of that child's wrap. So it's an honor to be someone asked to help that family, and it just really lets that family let down their guards, because they welcome, that they have some, challenges for many different reasons. So, and it's
Lifelong friends are being established, aren't they?
Well, it
And
just feels good
mentors.
to reach this level
Yeah.
to provide that, and not that, we have, it's not about the number. If we have just one child, we have
Right.
that service that can meet that need.
I think this is all critical in what we're doing. In my observation, is closing opportunity gaps, and we're identifying the students, we're providing the resources to those most at risk, and they truly need our help. Our middle to upper range, those kids are going to be fine, and they need to be challenged, but those who are in need, we need to grab them and make sure that they are, when they walk through that door, they have the same chance as the higher achiever, and a route, some type of a plan to get there. And my observation is that is what these programs are all attempting to do.
So that takes staff development.
Absolutely, that's it. I mean, and that's where I think too, it all comes back, in order to make sure that we're successful in meeting our students' needs and meeting our goals that we have established. It all starts with our staff also, and making sure they get what they need in order to continue to move our students forward. And we have great supports in place for our staff as well, with our coaches and our team leaders and department coordinators and teachers who just take a leadership role even if they aren't established in one of those roles also. Anything else who wants?
I have a few, but anybody else who wants to go first, please step up. Okay. Okay, so I have a couple questions. Do you have a para? Where are we in the para implementation? I mean, the only reason why I'm asking is I went to a workshop and I looked at this para list of things to do. And the first thing I looked at was, this is a lot of work. And then the second thing I looked at is it's over a long period of time. So I'm not pinpointing as to, looking at this date here, September 1st, or looking at this date here, October 1st, but do you feel like you're in pretty good shape for the implementation of para?
That's what Jen kind of referred to, yeah.
I talked about that earlier as far as the evaluation. That's the evaluation model. And so we're really taking the slow, that hamster wheel, slow implementation, and really focusing on doing it right. And I think what I'm taking from tonight and what I've heard from our teachers is less is more.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
I mean, really, I think that has to be our focus. And so while that's very articulated out date by date, I have that. I'm working off of it.
Okay, I know, but it's like, I looked at it,
But
Well,
that,
I didn't get that. You were, when you said take it slowly,
Mhm.
you were talking about para?
yes.
Okay, did I miss that?
I didn't say the word, I didn't say
Okay.
para because it's
She's
acronym,
talking
so I'm
about
trying not to speak in that language.
She said evaluation and then student growth.
Right.
And that goes to the point where we're integrating and aligning the multitude of different
Yes.
types of programs that have to be put into, our curriculum and our administration in order to comply with all of the standards and evaluations and guidelines and requirements that are being handed down. So if we have silos of all these things, we'll never get anything done. If we integrate them, and they are related and interrelated, and piggyback on each of them, we'll get there just fine and teach the basics.
Well, and I think my previous experience in Chatham has been that this is my personal opinion, I feel like we rush to be the first one, to say we did it first. And I really feel like this, it's more about doing it right.
Yes.
And making sure that we really look at it and go deep into it. Rather, to me, it's not about being the first one in the county to have it and then have to change it and redo it and before. It's just kind of waiting and using that time to really have the teachers work and have their input. And that's what I was talking about, those common assessments. They're already working on that. So when it gets to implementation, it's not going to be overwhelming. Because for them, they were overwhelmed. So to me, less is more. And if we don't have to focus on that right now, because once we start that 180-day timeline, that clock starts ticking, I don't think that's our focus right now, where this is our priority right now, rather than the evaluation.
Yeah, okay, I mean, I guess
But I have
we
that on
came
yellow.
we came to the same conclusion, didn't we? It's like a lot of work and,
It's overwhelming, and I think
Yeah.
when you put teachers then will get caught up on that, and then we lose the focus on kids.
And
That's what we're trying to take off their
Right.
plate.
And I'm so glad you said that, because that's another thing when we talk about common assessments. Every time teachers or our coaches are talking about common assessments, they keep linking it to student growth and evaluations. And we keep pulling them back and saying, common assessments is more, it's not about the evaluation. We can use those eventually as part of the growth model with evaluations, but truly a common assessment is about what do we want to learn about our students. So we need to focus on that, about growing our students versus student growth with evaluations.
And what do we
when
expect
it comes
students to know and be able to do
Right.
based on their learning targets?
So I would rather them talk about, common assessments now before it gets to evaluation, because we want them to focus on the academic part, about what can we learn about students, how can we change our instruction based on what we've learned from the data. And then they're going to realize when we get to the student growth portion of evaluations, we already have them there and they're comfortable and they're using them the way they should versus because it's part of the evaluation.
And like Jim said, we have so much data. I think it's important for us to focus on making sure that we are assessing for data that then drives our instruction rather than assessing to assess and not utilizing data. I think that is a big concern.
Every
that I
assessment
have.
should mean something, not just a grade.
Exactly.
You know what struck me when I was looking at all of these things? We don't have a special education report, solely that talks about the special education children. Like, I didn't realize that there are over 600 IEPs, because I remember asking Jen, well, how many IEPs do we have? I thought she was going to say 100. Did you know it was 600? So,
There is a special education report card for the district.
Yeah, but it's
on SB's website.
It's on.
Okay, but a lot of this stuff was on ISBE's website, but it seems that would be a good addition.
I didn't do that. One of the problems that I have is that we should be looking at all kids.
I
And that's
know.
really important for me to think about all kids and how they're functioning rather than pulling out a group and say, although I do that all the time.
Correct.
I look at them of how can we change our programming and make it better.
Okay, yeah, I understand that, but when you presented the ISAT data, Tammy, are the special education numbers in there?
Yes.
Okay.
And our universal data
Okay.
the data we presented there about
Okay.
our students within the tiers, all students. It's universal.
Okay. Well, I mean, you know, I didn't know that until I asked you, Jen, so, I mean, maybe, you know, maybe it's not really a report, maybe it's a, just, you know, sort of a summary of the program.
I could do that.
You know, whether it's at this meeting or some other, I don't.
I think that would be a good part of going along with our goal setting that we did, where the board looks at what reports they want on each month and it becomes that standing calendar. That would be good to, but I'd be happy to provide any data that you.
Well, and maybe that's, you know, when you think about it, it might be a nice idea if you put, you know, new board members come on and you're just trying to get a handle of what the district is, and it's a lot, but this area I feel like I don't know much about, and you help me get better informed, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
Not 100% informed, but better informed.
Provide whatever you.
So then my next question is, Tammy, you know, what's the role of the 5 Essential Survey? Was that a one-time shot or what?
It was once a mandate.
Oh,
And
it's
now-
once a mandate?
And now it's no longer. However, the mandate is that we have some type of survey to gather that information. That's one of the things that, as a cabinet, we're trying to determine what it is we're going to use. We have several different choices.
We get climate surveys every year.
Yeah, Jim is really kind of the guru with some of these surveys. He's helping us with understanding what surveys might be beneficial, especially at an elementary level. It's really tough to survey students.
Right.
So he has shared something with us, and I know it's, you know, on future cabinet agendas that we need to have a conversation about what we are using and what we're going to use. Carrie shared that information with us that we do have to choose something.
So, okay, you have to choose a survey. That's a mandate, correct? Now, why wasn't 5 Essential Surveys acceptable?
It is.
You can still choose.
You can
that.
still
Okay.
choose it.
Do you like it?
As a district, we did not care for it.
Okay.
I think.
Were there any districts elected?
I don't think.
I don't think so.
You for it to have
We
accurate
had trouble
data
with how
with it,
they
you had to have at
interpreted
least
results.
20%.
Right.
And some of the local districts said, this is ridiculous, we're not doing it.
Okay.
And there was there were different components to it. Honestly, we all gave the staff component regardless of the grade level or the building, but we found that our climate surveys gave us better information, gave us the pulse of the staff in our buildings versus what the 5 Essentials gave us.
Well, it's good, wasn't it? That was a mandate, if nothing else. It tells you what you don't like.
Yeah, I mean, it gave us, it gave us some conversations about that. Our climate surveys at least gave us the information we were wanting and needing to help us make changes, more so than the one that everyone was taking.
And then I guess I just have one question to you, Carrie. You know, I mean, I knew who the person was for the assistant superintendent last year, but in the stipend plan, I don't know who's doing all of these roles. Can you just fill this out for me? I mean, just tell me the names.
I think it's on board docs, but
No, I don't think the actual names are associated with board
I think so,
docs,
because
are
we
they?
hired them, or we gave them the stipends, so there was, I'll find out which one it was, which
Oh.
board docs it was, but, yeah.
For sure.
Personnel, we have it too.
Yeah, your personnel have it because that's who they know to call then, and ours do
Okay.
too,
Teachers
but
know.
I'll send it back out, yeah. Yeah, the teachers know and the staff know, we sent it out to the staff so that they know when they have a call about a student that's on homebound, or if they have a call about, a park assessment, professional development, they know who to call, so
Yeah.
I'll find it.
If you can just tell me
Yeah.
the meaning. I got the numbers, but, okay, well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I guess I missed that.
Sure. Nicely done, principals.
Other
Yeah.
questions?
I knew that last week.
this is wrapping up the SIP plans. And
This meeting, although, I'm sorry, I'm running a conference that starts tomorrow, but this meeting is why I wanted to be on the board. This meeting is the most important meeting to me of the year, just to listen to work that you all do to help our kids is just means the world. This is what it's about. So just thank you all for everything you do.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to steal a line from a young man who played soccer in our competitive leagues for years, and he spoke at the FCA get together back a few months ago at the Capitol Convention Center, and his comment was, you know, we all have to do this, and we all have to comply with new guidelines and new regs and new standards and new assessments and new tests but I didn't hear tonight, and he said, you know, not why, but how do we get this done? Mm-hmm. And what I heard from all of you tonight was not questioning why are we here and why do we have to do all this stuff, but you know, how do we get this done? And the how I heard was, you know, integrating everything and putting it together to come together to a common goal. And forget about all the different things that we have to do because it's overwhelming, but figure out, you know, how we get there, and you're getting there. So thank you all for your efforts and participation. I mean, it shows in the achievement of the kids, and that's why we're all here. So with that, this is an action item, so I will need a motion to approve the SIP plans as presented this evening. So moved. Thank you, Brandon. Second. Thank you, Lisa. Do we need to call the roll on this?
You can do it voice call if you want. All in favor?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. So that's everybody a yes on that for the purpose of taking the minutes. Right. Thank you very much. I know a lot of work went into that, so thank you. New business 4.2, approve wireless upgrade and reconfiguration. So what we have here is a continuation of the information from Sentinel that was presented to us at our last board meeting in board docs. Let's see, let's put this back up for me. We have two components, wireless radios and equipment to replace the loaners and the equipment that we had before that is in need of upgrade to improve the connectivity between buildings that was causing the instability of the network, and additional towers to improve those sight lines, and also some FCC licensing. Equipment and installation for the radios and equipment totals $29,471. Towers and construction, $8,128. FCC licensing at $1,721 for a total of that portion of the project of $39,320. In addition, there is a maintenance and support agreement. We've got to support this equipment and the towers. And that totals $1,300 for an annual assessment, health check, and also annual maintenance on site of $49.82 for an annual maintenance total of $6,282. There's an option for a 3-year discounted program that saves a couple $1,000, and also a 5-year discounted option that saves additional monies. So 3 years at $16,961, 5-year at $26,699. Discussion on
I have a couple points
proposals.
here. I sent you a copy of policy 2.100, Rick. Did you have a chance to look at that? Okay, do you feel that prior to voting on any further Sentinel projects, we should address some of the requirements outlined in 2.100 or not?
Regarding bidding? the
No,
dollar
regarding disclosure of potential conflicts.
We had a conversation, I read, we had a conversation with, on prompting from your email
Correct.
with legal today
Correct.
regarding that particular subject.
Correct.
And based on the feedback that we got, there is no conflict of interest.
Do you want to elaborate on that? Because, I mean, I think it's important for you to share some of the details on that, Rick, from Rick Renzenbach as our legal counsel.
Based on, and I didn't talk to Rick. I asked our
Sherry, you
superintendent
did?
to talk to Rick.
Could you please elaborate why Rick thought that was the case, Carrie?
I think the question was in regards to why Mrs. Carter had recused herself from the vote.
No, actually, that was not the issue I had. My issue was, I think that we haven't followed policy 2.100, and I don't make Linda Carter responsible for that. But if you look at 2.100, Carrie, I guess it doesn't have to be presented by Linda Carter, but I look at this policy and I wonder how Rick exempted the current situation in points 1, 2, and 3. Did he elaborate at all?
Let's read points 1, 2, and 3 so that everybody
Okay.
can.
Okay, here, well, why don't I just read the whole thing, because it doesn't take long. Disclosure of potential conflicts. Board members shall promptly disclose to the board any potential conflict that may reasonably create an appearance of impropriety, and to the extent such potential conflict relates to any specific action of the board, shall recuse themselves from any discussion or vote on such action. Now, Linda did. Matters which may reasonably create an appearance of impropriety include, without limitation, 1, hiring or other employment decisions by the district pertaining to a relative of a board member. Outside business relationships between board members and district employees, and business relationships between the district and the employer, business associate, or client of a board member. Now, I think that I did not know that Bill Carter was Linda Carter's son, and I'm sure he's very capable, but I am concerned about a couple points. One is, if you look at this plan that Sentinel put together, I think it's project number 4. It concerns me that he will be working with Ball Chatham employees to update and make changes in the configurations. That's under project number 4. I mean, I think there is a very easy answer to address this, and that may well be a staffing change, just having a different Sentinel employee work on this project. Because you once told me, Rick, that I needed to realize the power of being a board member, which, I don't think of myself as a powerful person, but several people told me that. Well, that comment needs to be extended to this situation at hand. And, if I was an employee and I had to work with a consultant who was the son of a board member, I'd be very careful of what I said. And I think it would impede my contribution to the project at hand. I really do. And I think that I'm not comfortable as it stands right now. I think the district, that's why I was interested in having Rick elaborate on this, Carrie.
And I would like to comment to that.
Okay.
One is, we read the conflict of interest.
Correct.
And nowhere there does it say that we're restricted from doing business with an entity that employs the son or daughter or child of any board member.
I
It's not
agree.
addressed there.
I agree. That's
Okay.
not my objection.
Okay, let's go a little further. This child, it's not a child, this is a grown individual
Correct.
with the relationship of mother, son, family member, but there's no financial or no tax, IRS dependent relationship between those individuals. They are independent individuals.
Correct, but, well, they don't make any differentiation whether they're an adult or not. But realistically, Rick, my email was very clear. I do not, I think Sentinel is competent, they have the expertise. I think that's fine. My problem is that I look at this work relationship and I get nervous. And you know what? Why wouldn't we want to see if we could find a different staffing configuration?
Well, number one, that's the job of Sentinel to staff.
Now, were they aware that Bill Carter was the son of Linda Carter, Carrie?
I don't know if Bill has told them that or not. I think they are aware now because they've been at board meetings and met her.
Did anyone of the district advise Sentinel that Bill was the son of a board member?
Is Bill a senior manager of this company? Is he
Not to my knowledge.
partner of this company?
I think he's an employee.
Actually, it's not, my concern is that we won't get the openness that we really need to make this successful.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I could. I'd be very careful. Because if you...
It seems certainly from what we've heard from the staff and administration, they're very open about their disappointment in the system the way it is to date. And I would not expect that to change just because Linda's son he happens to be the employee who has the technical expertise to help implement it. Because if you were to look at it that way, the fact that there will be so many people in this district, you had Mrs. Carter as a teacher, as a principal, that kind of is.
Well, I guess Rick Grenzenbach's opinion was based on the fact that Bill was an adult, or what?
He said she appropriately, looking at the policy, he said she appropriately recused herself.
Correct.
For the fact that her adult son is employed by this group.
She never made that statement.
No, that's what he said. That's the reason for her recusing herself.
The difficulty is, does the public know this? It says, board members shall promptly disclose to the board any potential conflict that may reasonably create an appearance of impropriety. It's a statement.
It is, but it goes on to say, employment decisions by the district outside business relationships and business relationships between the business and the employer, there is none. So that's what Rick was commenting on.
Well,
That none of those apply to this situation. They're simply a
but there is a
mother-son
business
relationship.
relationship, because if the district did not see if there could be another staffing, did the district ask Sentinel if there could be another staffing alternative?
Why would we? I think that goes to Rick's earlier point. They're the experts, not us. That's why we hired them.
Well,
Or that's why we
we also have to, besides just looking at the strictly conservative legal interpretation of policy 2.100, I think it behooves the district to realize that the community eyes are watching us on so many matters.
But there's other employees of this district who have relatives who work for firms who we do business with.
Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I mean, if that's the case, I didn't know it.
I think it's a small community, it's impossible to not have individuals work for
Yeah, there's people in this district office.
the
whose
banks that we
family-
do business with, the engineering firms that we do business with, the consulting firms that we do business with, all of the vendors that we do business with. I mean, that's.
But, okay.
We have thousands of
I
students
understand
and
though,
two
Rick,
parents
but
and-
of all of those relationships that are all over everywhere, how many of
This
those
policy just
people?
pertains to board members, though.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
It just pertains to board members.
I didn't know that Linda's son was a senior analyst with Sentinel and had 16 years in with them when we hired Sentinel. That's when that should have been disclosed, before we even hired them. I would thought they were out of Downers Grove. But now we find out that they have a Springfield office that her son's been with for 16 years. That creates an appearance of impropriety.
I don't understand what the relationship is between Linda Carter and Sentinel.
It's her son.
I still don't understand the relationship between Linda and Sentinel. I know her son. There's a mother-son relationship, but as far as any type of business relationship or contractual relationship or any type of relationship that's described in our board's policy, I don't see a relationship between Linda Carter and that organization.
Scroll that down, please. Here. Relative of board member.
Hiring or other employment decisions by the district pertaining to the relative of
Without
board member.
limitation.
We're not hiring
It's not
any
limited,
individual.
it's not limited to no three.
One of the other points that Rick Grenswag made
Went
was,
to legal, Steve.
I understand
He said she
how it did, but when we hired Sentinel, we as a board did not know that Linda's son was involved with that company. That's when it should have been disclosed.
Okay. This is not a hiring or employment decision by the district, but we did go over it. So let's flip this coin a little bit. So if we would now eliminate this firm or somehow push this firm back based on this type of information, what liability would the district have on that side for not giving them an equal opportunity to participate?
The Sentinel can still do their work. But does Bill need to be involved with that one phase where, I mean, Susan's got a good point, but I didn't even think of that. He's gonna be working with our employees.
Again, what liability would the district have by trying to dictate to Sentinel what staff to put on this task and to limit them? As a district, I would think we would want the most qualified person to be on this task.
Actually,
Is he the most qualified?
Actually, Rick, I think, did you talk to Jack at all about this very issue?
no.
Okay, well, before we say we have a liability to Sentinel, my suggestion was to give Jack a heads up and find out if there are any other staffing configurations available. And if the district hasn't done that, then I think we're having this conversation and, you know, maybe having a, what should I say, a vibrant conversation about this issue when there might be an alternative right available. I am not advocating that Sentinel no longer be on the job. I never did. I'm very concerned about having Bill Carter.
Is Bill the only person that can solve our problems?
Right.
That's not a question for me. That's
What you just said,
a question.
you alluded to that
No,
he was the only one.
No, I didn't. I said, we need to not tie Sentinel's hands and limit their management of their employees. That was my point.
Can they find somebody else then?
I don't know. That's a question for them.
I think
Well, they first need to be asked, they first need to be advised of at least a couple board members.
Per legal, they
concerns.
don't.
Well, you know, Rick,
Per
there's
legal,
so
there's not
much
a
more
conflict.
than just the legal opinion. That has been our difficulties in the past. That's been our difficulties.
Then we need to change our policy because that says matters which may reasonably create an appearance of impropriety.
I still don't understand how a board member's grown child, grown son, who has their own career, and there's no relationship, no direct relationship between that board member and the company. It's an issue. Neither did legal.
Then let's get rid of that policy.
I think on the
The
front
policy
end,
applies to different situations.
on the front end, it probably would have been a better idea for us to just throw that out there. I don't know personally though whether Bill stands to personally gain anything from this relationship, and then that would be where the issue would be if there is one. If he is a salaried employee without bonus potential and that sort of thing, then I agree with you, I don't see an issue. I think if there is the ability for something like that to happen, then it could be looked at that businesses push their way to benefit a family. But I don't know his, I mean, I've just been digesting what you guys were saying, I never thought about any of this, to be honest.
Carrie, was Linda involved in the engagement of
She was
Sentinel
not.
in any way?
No, she was not.
No, I agree with you that, Linda recused
Yeah.
herself, which was
Yeah.
proper.
Correct.
I don't think she pushed this, but all I think you're talking about is public perception.
Correct.
And how do we move forward? Because the heading on there is potential conflicts. That means that they're not there, but they could be. So I just think it's something we need to be aware of.
Right.
Jen, do you want to explain how, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you want to explain what his work has been to date? He's not advising or telling our staff what to do. He isn't the project lead on this. He's not a salesperson on this. He is an engineer who gets in. Do you want to explain that he logs in or shows that,
Yeah, I wasn't.
gets into the system and helps?
I wasn't involved in the engaging of Sentinel, so I can't speak to any of that. I just came in purely when Chad resigned. That's when I was brought into it. But he is their network analyst or their engineer, so he is the one actually completing the network assessment. And so he is kind of behind the scenes, looking at everything, looking at our servers, looking at our equipment, and diagnosing what we have, what we don't have. He has interviewed some staff members, so I know you talked about that, of being openness to get information from them to fully understand the background. But he is working on the configuration. In fact, they were emailing him today because they had questions and we had a ticket in. So they were emailing him directly to get help, the help they needed to get GMS's lab and Chatham's lab, because we were kind of stuck again. And he was the one helping them fix that, providing the support and direction that they needed. But they don't report to him. They use him as a resource, and he really can go in and, I hate to say configure, I know that I'm using my hands, but that's how I look at it, is he's behind the computer screen kind of configuring the network and the issues and the traffic and things along those lines. I don't know if that answers what you were looking for. But he's been on site, he's been off site. He's also a parent in our district. His children attend our schools. But for me, I mean, we've been dealing mostly with the sales personnel and then their project manager, Dave McNeely, kind of advising where he's kind of the worker and going in and fixing it.
All right, so with that, any other questions on that?
Let's see. There aren't. Well,
Any other questions on the 39,000?
Well, no,
Or the disclosure
no, we're not there
of
yet.
potential conflicts?
No, on your questions on the disclosure and the potential. I understand exactly. And after talking with legal and looking at it and looking at, you know, I don't see the link. But I see the sun, but I don't see the business relationship there. And neither did legal.
Well, it's as simple as that heading right there, disclosure of potential conflicts. It's a potential conflict that shouldn't have been disclosed.
Okay, now it's disclosed. So we haven't voted on this, now it's disclosed. So I can count, I see the numbers here. So what we will do is table this until our next meeting, and in interim, have further discussions on how we interact with Sentinel and any potential solutions they may have to this dilemma.
well, now, one of the things that would certainly alleviate some of my concerns is if Jen can, you know, find out that the employees do not feel inhibited by having Bill work on this configuration. That's one of my assurances. That's a big concern to me. Then, I don't know, I mean, the bonus question, Brandon, I mean, I didn't even think about that.
I understand your questions, and I'm trying to listen to all of them,
Mhm.
and we'll take them and bring this back, or an alternative back at the next available time.
When is our next meeting?
3
We have
weeks
a
from
meeting.
today.
No, we have another meeting coming up in a couple weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Did
Yeah, the
anything,
13th.
what came back from tech on, when you sent out the thing saying this was on the agenda tonight?
Hear back from Ted. Oh, I didn't get any responses. Yeah. I mean, when we sent it to the committee, yeah, I didn't get any responses.
Is what this agenda item is tonight something that would be implemented to make a difference, like, right away? Because it
Well,
was-
I mean, that's not the, I agree with you that we want to move forward and seem to have the desire to move forward as fast as possible to improve the situation that we have in the technical component of the district. However, we want to make sure that we are addressing all the concerns
I'm sorry, I
surrounding
think that I didn't state that correctly. I guess because I missed the discussion last week, I just didn't know, is this like the very next step that needs to be taken next? At whatever point
Yes,
it
yeah.
happens?
And did this recommendation come from the committee that met on Thursday?
No.
No.
No?
It came before that from Sentinel.
Tech meets next week.
No,
This week.
Or this week, yeah. It's all falling together, it's another time. So, I mean, I would think we can move pretty fast after that. I think I feel more comfortable if we're putting together a committee to do this.
That they analyze this first.
Right, and I think they're all in agreement that this is probably a logical next step. Everybody's just getting to know each other and figuring out what's going on. And what we don't want to do is jump and then, like you're all talking about with other evaluation tech tools, you don't want to all of a sudden realize, well, we could have done it a little bit better or a little bit more long-term. Although this is probably, from what I'm looking at, is probably the right way to move, but in the sense of feeling like we've looked at it as thoroughly as possible, it's probably a good idea.
Well, I mean, as far as the necessity of this proposal, I think, wasn't this addressing the issue of no backup?
No, not this.
All
Oh,
this
not
is
this?
better
This is
signal.
the
Connectivity
wireless.
between
Oh,
the-
connection.
That's this
Okay.
issue.
So, no, I hear you, and let's table this and bring it back as soon as possible. Let's get it to the committee, let's get some answers from Sentinel, and I'm not sure how we poll the staff to see if, but, or how, what that would
They're
look
pretty
like,
open,
but,
I think, so.
okay.
Tell me.
Right, I think that,
Learned a
that's a
lot.
very important.
Like renewing the citrus agreement, that was something that had to be done.
Absolutely.
Get that
We had a bug.
But this here is not something that has to be done before.
It does because
We-
we're borrowing their radios too.
And the way Sentinel explained it is, we have a temporary fix
Yeah.
on right now. So at any point, because it's an unlicensed
Correct.
frequency, somebody could come in and overtake our bandwidth, and we're back to where we were 3 weeks ago where we had no connection. So when you're looking at urgency, I do agree that we're getting to that point. But I also agree with Brandon, and I spoke of this at our committee, I think we need to be very strategic with what we do with this, because we need a big picture and a plan moving forward. So I don't want to move too fast. However, this has been identified that this is a big area.
We've spent $40,000 to $50,000 every time we turn around,
Right.
if we're not careful.
Right, and I don't want to do that, I mean, I want to do it right the first time.
After tech meets on Thursday, if we push them to make this decision, how quick can we get us all together so we can vote and let them move?
We're together on the 13th,
I
but
was going to say,
We
we're
have
already
posted.
together for IBB.
It would need to be
I'll
posted
ask
for
Jo,
a couple
she was
days.
going to.
Well, that's 13th is a week or a week and a half. If it's something we need to move.
It's
Yeah.
not showing up yet, but I'm sure she's
Well, we
got
don't
it.
know when they're going to pull the ones that they loaned us. We don't know when somebody's going to overtake our frequency. And they can expedite the license going the FCC to 10 to 14 days. We're still looking at least a month out from implementation. So
And weather and all that.
just keep that in line
stuff.
with your timeline. Right?
I don't know, Jen, do you know how much of this work Bill does anyway?
I don't think he does
He doesn't
anything.
do, we know he doesn't do tower climbing and placing the radios on top of the high school. I don't know if he would be the person configuring the radios or not.
That I'm not sure. They brought in a totally different solutions architect, that Mike Sewell,
Mike
who I
Sewell,
didn't
yeah.
meet with, you met
Yeah.
with. Somebody who was totally different than who we have been working with, because
He's
it's a
the radio
totally
guy.
different component to our assessments.
So let's table this and gather necessary information so that everybody's comfortable with it. We do things the right way and address everyone's concerns.
In that regard, when we're looking at numbers, under the outdoor wireless, there is a statement that any required zoning, variance, permits, engineering reviews are the responsibility of the customer. Have we checked in with Dave Murphy on this?
Can that be part of the tech meeting?
Correct.
That sounds like a general coverall, but
It does,
But let's
but I mean,
confirm- I agree,
or
let's
we can
confirm it
hire
in committee.
Sentinel. I'd
I
like to
don't think
hear.
there's issues because it's all stuff being attached to our existing buildings. So
Okay.
we're not using any right of ways.
There's no reason for variance or permit.
Okay.
We're not putting it on village
So
property, for
are
example.
you speaking on behalf, I mean, has Dave looked at this, Carrie?
No, Jim Wolf is on the committee though, so.
Okay. So all we have to do is.
But I can send this to Dave.
Yeah, well, Jim Wolf reports today, doesn't he?
Yeah, but I can share that.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, what I would really appreciate now that we're starting to deal with some big numbers here is that we have Nate develop accounting schedules like the construction schedules were, and I think these invoices are really important to divide up. All we have to do is ask the vendor to divide up what Nate thinks will be covered by bond monies and what professional fees will not be covered by bond monies, because the way I read this is that we had $39,000 for outdoor wireless, $29,471 for Compact Plus, $1,721 for license, and $5,000 plus for mounting structures. That's how I read the numbers. So we're at close to 75 grand here. But my point is, plus the 30 for the report, that was 30,000. So now we're at 100,000. I think the numbers are getting big, so we need to start having some accounting schedules.
Right, and you're adding those from the other meeting, the other components of the project, not just what we're talking about.
Correct.
Okay.
No, but
I agree. And
I
at
look
the
at
last-
this,
But at the last meeting, we did ask for that.
yeah, that's
right,
fine.
That those schedules to be created, so I think
Correct.
they're in process.
But I'm not getting the numbers you're getting. I'm getting more.
I'm specifically talking about the agenda item at hand tonight, which was
39.
the wireless radios and equipment,
Correct.
the wireless towers in construction, the FCC licensing, which is 39,320, and then the annual health check under maintenance and support, and also the NBD on-site annual maintenance, which totaled 6282. So that's 46 grand right there. And then there were options for
Right.
extended maintenance, which we could or could not do depending on how long we want to spread out those costs to
Right.
maintain that equipment. So,
But that won't be covered by bond money anyway, so.
no, but we'll look into what
Yeah.
about the wireless radios and equipment,
Correct.
the tower and construction and that maybe.
Correct.
And we'll look into that. And we are. Okay, anything else on that? So with that, we move to Communications 5.1, Citizens. We have 2 visitors tonight. Would anyone like to address the school board concerning any topic? Hey, Greg.
My name is Greg Radovich. I just want to say, I went and I looked through this when I knew this was coming up, and I looked at the Illinois compiled statutes. And I understand there's different statutes for school boards versus, there's regular state government where I work. We have a pretty rigorous bidding process. And I know there's an exemption in here that allows you to get around this with computer technology. But, this is not the first contract that people have had questions with to deal with information technology stuff. As a matter of fact, the contract prior to this with AOS is questionable. There's some things we're working through with that right now. But my question, I guess, in all this is, why don't we have a policy of getting bids on all this stuff? So you get past some of this stuff where you go with a sole vendor and, now we have a discrepancy in, is this a legitimate deal or not legitimate deal? And I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying, why not get 3 bids? And, going back to what we were talking about earlier, having the money to hire extra teachers and hire extra, people for interventions and stuff like that. Well, those funds come from saving dollars, okay? And the only way you're going to save dollars is to have a policy where you go out and competitively make people bid so you can bring the costs of services and goods down so you have more money to use later for things that I think are important, which is hiring teachers and people and staff that can make a direct impact on my children. That's all.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else? Dwayne? That's slim pickings for the visitors, so.
I don't know, Aaron's behind you.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't see them there. All right, so with that, we move to our adjournment. So I need a motion to adjourn our special SIP meeting. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourning at
8:43.
8:44.
Sorry, I just wasn't too